So let's get started. We started off in Saigon, otherwise known as Ho Chi Minh City, but almost everybody seems to refer to it as Saigon. And we arrived there February 2nd. And the first thing that you should know is that you should get your e-visa down as accurately as possible. Check and double check that all of the things like your names and more importantly, your travel dates all line up. I made a mistake and my e-visa was incorrectly dated for 2 days later than I was actually there. So we got pulled aside by immigration and told to go to the emergency e-visa window, which we did. And I had read about this and I knew that you could get an e-visa right on the spot, that it would just take some more time and cost a little bit more than the $35 that I had paid. Okay, fine. But it is after midnight and we have been traveling for 21 plus hours. We are exhausted. We trampled our last nerve quite some time ago. Yeah. So when we meet the guy that I will now refer to as the officious bastard, he looked at my e-visa and says, well, you've got to, this is what you have to do. I'm like, what is that? He said, you're going to have to stay here in the airport for 2 days. So I laughed. He didn't. And when I was done laughing, I said, okay, well, that's not going to happen. What is our other option? He says, well, you'll have to secure a new visa. And I said, great, let's do that. I'll spare you the details. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of going back and forth. It was stupid. It was weird. But at the end of it, he said, okay, I have your new visa and that's going to cost $250 US. Now, he was clearly looking for a bribe. The e-visa probably cost, I don't know, maybe $100, and I could have made a fuss and I could have demanded to see his supervisors and all of that. But you know what? I've got $250 and I just didn't want to take the time. So I forked it over. He gave us a new visa and we went on our way. And now I've got a great story to tell. You officious bastard. My Saigon impressions. So we started off at a luxury hotel because we knew we needed a good place to recuperate from our long journey. And the My House in District 3 was just the place. It had this sumptuous pool that was on the roof and had this beautiful view of Saigon. And it had poolside service where we had drinks and we had food, and it was truly lovely. It had what I now know to be one of the best breakfast buffets that we're going to see. It was enormous and varied and delicious and wonderful. When we did leave the hotel, it was to get eSIMs for our phones. And so we had to take a short little walk to get to the cell phone store. And we had our first encounter with the motorcycle culture in Vietnam, which is loud because there's a lot of motorcycles. In this case, 12 abreast on a 3-lane road, and loud. We found out that Beep Beep is the national anthem for Vietnam. And it's crazy how the motorcycles work, but they just do. We also notice that the humans of Saigon they're just a really aspirational people. Everywhere we went, which was not a lot of places, to be fair, they were taking pictures of themselves. They were engaged in really elaborate photo shoots with professional photographers and stylists and people holding reflectors from multiple angles. It was kind of insane. You see here in front of the Opera House, they had rented a vintage Mustang, 2 of them actually. And it was just really interesting. And we have found out since that this is a more Southern Vietnamese culture of taking these pictures and selfies to distraction almost. My personal theory is that the Saigon culture is a little bit more in tune with the world. And I think that they want to be the next popular Asian culture. You know, they know that the Koreans are in it now, but it's not going to last. And they want to be the one that's popular next. And I think they're just uploading stuff to social media to show the world how beautiful and how cool they are. So there was that. It got a little tedious after a while, to be real honest with you. So my thoughts on Saigon, we didn't like it very much. Probably didn't give it a fair shake, we were really tired and hadn't recovered, but it was just so loud and chaotic. Um, if you're going to stay someplace, District 3 to us was better than District 1. District 1 was even more crowded, even more loud. It was filled with massage parlors, and there was nothing in the stores that looked like I'd want to buy. It was not my thing. Yeah. And then beep, beep everywhere, beep, beep. And the beep, beep in Saigon, to me, felt more urgent and impatient and frankly rude than the beep beeps in other cities in Vietnam. The weather was beastly. It wasn't impossible. It was just really uncomfortable. So if you're going to go to just South Vietnam, I would recommend going earlier, like, December or maybe November. And the other note is that while you may intellectually understand, I didn't even think about it, but Vietnamese is a big country, and so it has regional cuisine. And South Vietnamese food, the base flavor is sugar. It's quite sweet. Even when it's savory, it's sweet because they're right next to the Mekong Delta, which raises a large portion of the world's tropical fruits, and that is going to influence the cuisine. So it's very, very sweet. Almost immediately, like the next day after Saigon, we took off for a 2-day tour of the Mekong Delta with Saigon Happy Tours, an amazing company, highly recommend. And this was something that I thought we would really enjoy because we love the rural lifestyle. We love nature. We love authentic, unspoiled culture. And boy, did we get that in the Mekong. A very first thing that we did is we visited a local market. Now, this is a market that served maybe a couple, 3 villages. It was relatively small, but bustling, right? It had every vegetable and fruit that you can think of and a bunch more that you've never seen, I've never seen. It had live seafood of every sort swimming around in these metal bowls, yeah, and spices and preserved foods. And you can see this motorcycle. It's a covered market, albeit it's covered with tarps. There's the motorcycles go wherever they want to. Wherever pedestrians go, motorcycles can go too. And it was it was weird we got used to it, but right then it was very strange to see a motorcycle barreling through a crowded marketplace that should only have pedestrians. Um, then we went off into the Mekong, and the Mekong River is a major river. You'll see a picture of it in a minute, but it's a delta region. So there is just innumerable quiet channels that come off of the main river where it's residential, it is quiet, there's dead ends, there's cul-de-sacs, it's everything that you would see with a road system just on water. And everything is so green. There were more greens than I could mix with all the watercolors that I own. And it was amazing to be in this place where you can hear yourself think. It was intoxicating and it was soulful, and we loved it. This is just another picture. You can see this house down in the lower left. Many of the people, maybe even most of the people in the Mekong are rural and relatively poor. So their homes are quite basic. They are, quite frankly, just shelter. Many have electricity, but it's not something that we take for granted. It's there to be used for things like refrigeration and maybe TV, but it's not how we use electricity. They get around everywhere in boats and motorcycles. Cars are for commercial use and for rich people and really no one else. And the other thing that we noticed is that most of most everything is done with human power, not industrial power. There are small motors, there is some industry, but pretty much everything that they can do with their hands, they do. This is a picture of women who are getting the village's work done. We learned about burial customs here in the Mekong, and we saw this throughout Vietnam. Asians are, at their very basic nature, an ancestor worship culture. We believe that the ancestors watch after us from beyond, and they will either protect or destroy us depending on the respect that we give them in the here and now. So what we saw was this grave site, this what do you call it? A crypt? Yeah, this crypt that was built right on family land. And what our tour guide said is that they built this crypt on family land. This would have been the grandmother of this particular family that we visited with. Well, they built the crypt right on the family land because they want to basically prevent their descendants from ever selling the family land outside of the family. It's a hella manipulative, but that's the way Asian societies are. Our ancestors are always manipulating us, either by guilt or, this, something like this. And the reason it works is because we believe in ancestor worship. So no other Vietnamese family is going to want to buy a piece of land that has an ancestor's grave on it. They'd be too afraid that the ancestor will come back and kill him or something. So the descendants will never be able to sell the land. Therefore, it's going to stay in the family forever. Now, this is the main channel of the Mekong, and it's super wide. Is it as wide as the Mississippi? I don't know, but I saw a little piece of the Mississippi, and I would say, yeah, it's huge, and is a main artery for commerce, for transportation, for culture. We not only saw these huge boats, but we also saw the floating market. And this is of fame, right? And it used to be this huge thing, but I feel like it exists primarily now for tourists because, as our guide explained to us, now there is a lot of roadways and there's lots of motorcycles and even a fair number of commercial motor vehicles to transport goods and produce. So the commerce by boat is not as necessary, it's not as vital as it was before. So what we saw was colorful and it was lovely, and we did in fact get a lunch of pho noodles and some Vietnamese coffee from a floating restaurant there in the floating market, and it was cool. We also visited a houseboat where a family is living there because they don't have any land for a house. What they have is a boat, and on this boat is everything they need. There's sleeping spaces and living spaces for socializing. They have a toilet that consists essentially of a closet with a hole open to the water. Yeah, I don't even want to think about that. But they do everything on this boat, and they even have electricity, even though the electricity is just 3 car batteries that have been wired together. And every so often, they pull electricity from a relative that has a house on a riverbank, put it into their battery, and then they're good to go. So, as you might imagine, they use this electricity very sparingly. In fact, they had a refrigerator that they didn't even have turned on because you only turn it on when you need to refrigerate something. It's not a full-time thing. We also did some made for tourist things. We visited I think they call it Festival Island or Culture Island, something like that. Anyway, there was a working fish farm there where we did a number of odd things like dunk our feet into a koi pond that had so many koi that they nibble at your feet. It's supposed to be, fun. I found it kind of horrifying, not because I'm afraid of fish, but because there were so many fish in there that many of them were deformed, blind, and other things. So it just felt really wrong. they also, and this is not for Fish Island, it's for everything. They love to brew a form of moonshine from rice and rice hulls that is like 1,000 proof alcohol. It's very strong, and they pickle king cobras in this moonshine to come up with a snake liqueur. And it's thought that if a man drinks this liqueur, he will be more virile. So yeah, whatever. People will believe anything. I do not drink per se, so I spent some time with this lovely boa constrictor who was absolutely delightful, and lovely to hold and to kiss with. So there was that. Also went to a homestay for lunch. A homestay is a hotel where the family lives at the hotel. So think of it more like a bed and breakfast. And then they took us for a little motorcycle ride around the neighborhood, which is fun. I needed to practice for my motorcycle tour later. So that was thrilling. And here is our tour group posing for a typical ancestors picture. So my thoughts on the Mekong. I loved it. There are scenes from that 2 days that will forever be part of my growing happy list, places. I mean, my happy places list. It's just dawn breaking over the water and slowly lighting up the vegetation and the boats and the houses that are there. Just it's breathtaking. Um, we highly recommend. Oh, mosquitoes. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. Mosquitoes were a thing, but they were not the big thing that we thought they would be. A light coating of mosquito repellent, and we never even heard those little buggers. So don't be as afraid of mosquitoes as we were. So that is my presentation for the first leg, Saigon and the Mekong Delta. I hope you enjoyed it.